Hello, everybody. I hope you are enjoying the first day of our End of Life of Issues and Strategies event. My name is Alexandra Nowak. I'm a Senior Exhibition Manager at Wind Europe, and it's my pleasure to introduce you to our first sponsored session of this event. So, if you followed the session at one on Repowering in Europe, you already had opportunity to meet with Karen Ann Houghton, Head of Repowering and Life Extension at RES, and Christophe Soulier, Repowering Manager at RES. In this session, we will go further into details and we will look at repowering in France, UK, and Ireland. Before we start the presentation, let me just remind you that you can ask questions during the whole session. When you go to the session in agenda, there is a button with Q&A questions. So the floor is yours, Karen.
Thank you, Alexandra. So yes, in terms of today, if you could show the slide. Yep, in terms of our agenda, I'll start off very briefly by introducing RES, in case you missed it earlier. I'll then pass over to my colleague Christophe, who's going to give you a French example of repowering, talking about the development challenges, the PPE context, and also provide an economic demonstration. And then Christophe will pass the baton back to myself, and I'll close out with some lessons learned from implementing life extension in the UK and Ireland. Then, as Alexandra mentioned, I'll pass back to her and we'll have a Q&A session at the end. So firstly, just to clarify, RES is the world's largest independent renewable energy company. With 38 years of experience, we're a trusted partner for a wide range of clients, offering services from inception through to generation across wind, solar, and energy storage. We've delivered 18 gigawatts of renewable energy globally, and we support 6 gigawatts of operational assets. And now I'll pass over to you, Christophe.
Thank you, Karen Ann. Hello, everybody. So yes, I will take. I will go further in the details on the French example. So I hope that most of the participants were present at the previous presentation. Okay, the slide. Okay. So a few words on RES in France. So we are a key player on development, construction, and asset management in France. With, for example, for the last 3 years, 9 projects permitted these last 3 years, and 5 projects laureate on the CFD tenders in France. And we work on we initiated our repowering activity in 2017. And we had a first success on repowering topic in 2018 with the permit obtention of our first repowering project, and in this year 2018 the first tariff secured for a repowering project for this same wind farm. We are not an asset owner, so our model is to have a collaboration with asset owner, and we already have 3 contracts signed, 3 signed contracts with 3 different asset owners in France. Repowering is already quite large part of our development activity. For example, we apply this year for 5 repowering applications this year. And these 5 applications are quite ambitious repowering with a doubling of the annual production of this project. Few words on the development challenges in for repowering in France. One of the major constraints in France is the limited ability to increase the height of a wind turbine, and this for 2 reasons. The first one is aeronautic and radar constraints. We have 40% of the national territory under constraint, and it is a big challenge for repowering. We hope and we work on the fact that army and the radar operators will be diligent in the repowering opportunity. The second challenge is the administrative and the administrative restriction in the permitting instruction on landscape topic and bird and bats constraints. In synthesis, French repowering project are in average turbine height increase of 30%. We are not doubling the dimension of the project, but with this kind of turbine increase, we are able to double the annual production in average on our projects. So about the PPE context, I detailed that just before, so I will go fast. In France, we are repowering projects are eligible to a 20-year CFD, so this can provide security in the revenues, and but we are in the tariff decrease plan. So we have an interest in France to secure planning authorization at the sooner to have the better CFD price secure for the repowering. So the economic levers to make a profitable business model in France is the turbine height increase, the power increase, and the fact that we have a 20 years tariff that provide a security in the revenue. And now I will explain what is our analysis in France that conduces to conclude the fact that we have an interest to repower quite early in France. So on this graph, so this study is about a French project in south of France with 16 turbine 1.3 megawatts and about 100 meter height turbine. So it is a project with a very high wind. So it is a very good project. This project has 15 years now, and even if it is 15 years, we have a project value. So when we do an actualization of the revenue of the wind farm, we have an actual value of the project, a project value about 10 million euros with an electricity sale price at the market. So on this curve, on the curves in the clear blue on the graph. Now we first study an asset life extension on this wind farm, and we can prove that we can do an optimization of the value by life extension. After that, we analyze our capability to repower the wind farm with new turbines. So first case with a 125 meters height turbine, we can provide. In fact, we simulate the commissioning of this wind farm in different year, but depending the year when you do your repowering, you don't have the same tariff secured, because I provide before the fact that the sooner you obtain your planning authorization, the better tariff price you have. So you have in blue, in dark blue, the forecasted price for the electricity in the bid tender, in the tariff tender. So if we do the repowering very early, we have a better project value because we have a better tariff. And when we stay, if we stay to do your repowering, you decrease the value. And if you look at this graph, you can see the fact that the project value of the repowering project is more decreasing if you wait than the natural decrease of your existing asset. So the delta, the difference between the repowering value and the current project value is high if you repower early. So you have an interest in France to repower early, because the value of repowering is more decreasing if you wait than the value of your asset if you wait. And after that, if you do a more ambitious repowering, you have a better value, but you cannot do as early than the previous scenario, because you are not in a simplified process repowering, because in France you can have access to a simplified repowering permitting process only if your repowering is not very ambitious. And with the last scenario, we put a very high turbine that needs to do an entire development. So that's all for the economic demonstration. I hope it is clear, and I remain fully available to explain that with in another place. And a few words on that we seek. In fact, like I said, RES is not an asset owner. We are a development company and an asset manager. And we seek to create partnerships with asset owner based on our complementarity. In fact, we have development capability and construction and asset management capacity, and the site owner has an asset and could need development capability to do his repowering. So our two models are co-development or development service agreement for repowering. And our approach, we can provide feasibility study to arrive on the decision to start the development, and after that we can contract with a development service agreement. Thank you, and I will pass now the slides to Karen for the life extension topic.
Thanks very much, Christophe. Now, repowering, every project is different, and the time that you choose and the point at which in the project's life you choose to repower will vary from project to project. So I wanted to talk a little bit about life extension and some of our experiences here in the UK and Ireland. Now, as well as determining whether it's possible to operate the turbines for longer than their original 25-year life and their 20-year design life, whether the wind farm can operate for longer, there are some other elements that you need to consider. Do you need to extend the lease with your landowners? Do you need a planning extension? And is your grid got a termination date? These are some of the questions that you will need to address. And doing these works may involve a little bit of cost. So all of these elements, you need to look at the project economics. So firstly, is it safe to extend the wind farm life? Absolutely key. And then, is it economic to do so? But ultimately, life extension can increase the value of your asset if it's done well, and it can help you secure a longer period in order to get that repowering consent. Now, if I move on to our next slide, lease extension is something that I've mentioned. Now, we've worked on a number of sites varying from a very simple site with one main site landowner, and we've just had one negotiation, to complex sites with multiple main site landowners, access landowners, deeds of covenant, agricultural tenancies, lots of different land documents. And it's important to review all of them to determine which ones need extending. They may not all need extending, and to understand whether other clauses that might need amending as a result of extending lease terms, things like the decommissioning clauses, things like that may need rewording. And I think one thing I would stress is you can't assume it's always going to be a straightforward negotiation. Yes, we've had some landowners who've been quite happy to go ahead and secure a lease extension. Others haven't wanted to sign up to lease extension at all. Others have been reluctant to do so because they would prefer a repowering contract. So, go into that with an open mind, accept that it may potentially be difficult and uncertain, and consider also your strategy. If you've got multiple landowners, what's the plan of attack? Who do you speak to first? Typically, we've gone to main site landowners first, but if there's a very potentially difficult negotiation on access, you might want to start that first. So definitely something to consider. And as I mentioned, often there is a landowner preference for repowering. So it's trying to speak to the landowners and understand what their concerns are, because it's not one or the other. Quite often life extension gives you that little bit extra headroom, a little bit more breathing space to secure that repowering. And it's about reassuring the landowners on that. Now, while some landowners have been happy to secure an extension and to give us an extension at the existing rent, most often than not, they've looked for an increase in rent during the period of the extension. And that feeds back to the project economics. So can the project afford to increase the rent over that period? That may help determine whether it is potentially possible to secure a lease extension. And then when we've got the agreement, the heads of terms all agreed, we'll then look to start getting the documents all drafted. Now, as Christophe said, we're not an asset owner. We are a provider of services to a wide range of clients, and what we're doing is we're trying to look at it from the point of view of client, get best value for them, and often that means looking at how we structure the documents, such as to minimise the tax liability for our clients or the tenants in the case of the lease documents. And that's quite often meant is that we've structured it as an option to extend the lease when the current lease expires. Another thing to consider is the impact on project financing and in terms of timescales on the approvals. So if you've still got a bank financing on your project, you may need to secure bank approval before you go into an agreement to extend the lease, to factor that into your timescales. But lease extension, as you can see, there are lots of different moving parts. So it can take some time. So definitely one to consider securing early. Now, when it comes to planning extensions, it's advisable in the UK to secure your lease extension first. What you don't want to be in a position is that, you secure a planning extension for your project and your landowner is effectively holding you to ransom because you didn't get that lease extension secured first. So definitely, I would suggest get your leases done first and then look to go to planning. Now, we have seen some interesting projects in Ireland. Some of the earlier projects in the Northern Ireland and the Republic have evergreen planning, so they don't have a time duration in there. And we've also seen some projects in the Republic of Ireland which were consented, and then subsequently a special protection area was introduced around them, so they now reside within an SPA. But typically, on the whole, most projects will have a time constraint in their planning or their permit, and you would need to seek to vary the condition relating to that duration in the existing consent. Now, it's important to engage with local planners early in the process because there are different interpretations of environmental regulations. So it's trying to understand what environmental supporting information they might require for that planning extension application, and also to understand what duration of extension they might be prepared to accept. For one of our clients, we were asked to secure a 5-year extension, but we were able to speak to the local planners who declared a climate emergency. I'm glad to say we were able to secure them a 10-year planning extension. So it's definitely worth having a chat early on. Now, we've obviously touched on a bit about the point about the community support and the need for that for onshore wind in England, which effectively created a moratorium. On the basis of the Kirkby-Moore life extension decision, life extension may be exempt from community support in England. So that's an interesting point to be aware of. Another thing to consider is the legal agreements. So have a check of them. When you set out the terms for the community benefit, what was the duration of that? Was it the duration of the operational life, in which case if you extend, there's an obligation there to pay that community benefit for that period of the extension? Or is it a case of, there is a time constraint? It's maybe just the 25 years of the original consent. And it's worth having a discussion, or having a consideration as an asset owner. Would I be prepared to pay the community benefit for that period of extension, even though I'm not obliged? All of these things need to be factored into the project economics to determine whether that is feasible. And as with planning, as with leases, it is worth considering securing that early. Planning extension can take time. The last thing you want to do is have the consent on your existing project expire before you secure that planning extension. Because if you have, you're talking about a full new planning application and a retrospective one at that. Now, when it comes to the technical aspects, is it safe and is it economic? Modelling and inspections play a key role in that. And especially, as we're looking towards a 20-year design life, we need to start thinking about the technical feasibilities of life extension. It's important to consider significant changes that have happened to the turbines and the wind farm over its life. Things like performance upgrades or the correction or awareness of yaw misalignments could have impacted on loads on the turbine. They need to be considered in the modelling in order to determine the remaining useful life of the turbine. Now, modelling and inspections are complementary, and we do feel that they have an important role to play and they work together in tandem. Now, it's important to say that whilst the majority of turbines and the majority of wind farms should be suitable for life extension, not everyone will. Now, the way that life extension works in a technical terms is that you're looking at the site conditions that the turbine experienced in relation to the design conditions for that turbine. Now, typically, the site conditions will be less extreme than the turbine design conditions, in which case you've got a little bit of headroom. And it's that headroom in those loads that allows you to operate the turbine for longer. However, if you've got a site where the site conditions are more extreme than design conditions, and we have come across one of those in our own experience with one of the projects that we have worked with, then it may not be possible to operate that turbine, even up to the 25 years that it was originally planned for. In that particular project, we're now pursuing a strategy of repowering. Now, with life extension, I think that it's important to say that there is typically, coming out of the inspections and the modelling, a need for remedial works and potentially ongoing turbine inspections for the duration of its life to keep an eye on those critical life limiting elements, ensuring safety. Now, in terms of the remedial works, some of the things we've seen, you can see from the photos there, sometimes it's related to things like corrosion. This is some photographs of one of the wind farms that RES inspected as part of our life extension works, and you can see there's some corrosion there on the turbine. Now, whilst the corrosion itself wasn't enough to prevent life extension, we were able to secure a life extension for our client. If left unchecked, that corrosion could have invalidated the modelling. So it was, as part of the remedial works, it was important to look at corrosion prevention, repainting. And that introduced a not insignificant cost into the operational budget for the project, which had to be considered in the project economics. It's also worth noting that we have done some inspections on some more younger turbines since then, and we're not seeing the same levels of corrosion, which you might expect as material technology has advanced over the years. Now, one point to make is it's important and it's beneficial to invest in turbine maintenance during the course of its life. If you don't, then I think you can expect higher remedial works in order to enable life extension. So that level of remedial works is often linked to the maintenance record and something to bear in mind when you're looking at that maintenance strategy. But it's also worth considering obsolescence, so the availability of spare parts may become an issue, and it may actually have an impact on your ability to extend life. So definitely worth considering that. And there may be a benefit in upgrading certain components in order to extend life, things like SCADA systems, so that you can continue to get full visibility of those turbines as they age. And one thing I would like to say is that the end of life strategy is fundamental to the maintenance plan. So the earlier you decide and have an idea of what that end of life strategy might be, the sooner you can incorporate that. So if you know that you're going to plan to extend the life of your turbines and your wind farm, and you plan to operate to 30 years or beyond, that can be integrated earlier into your maintenance plan, and it can help the business case for upgrades and other elements as part of that. Thank you. And if I pass back to Alexandra. Oh,
You're
Alexandra, you're mute. Sorry.
Oh, it's classics. Sorry for that. Thank you for the presentation. I think we had a few questions, so we still have 7 minutes. I don't know if we want to tackle some of them. I don't think we will have the time to answer all of them. So have a look.
That'd be great.
You see the questions in the chat window from the backside.
Maybe I can start with the question about my presentation, and maybe Karen, I don't know if you can make an answer on the first question on the Swedish market. On my topic, one of the first question is how RES work with the owner, and how many years before the end of life would you start to repowering project in France? In fact, that we recommend in France is to start the repowering reflection very early, around at the 11 year of the project, to be able to repower early between the years just after the 15 years. So we recommend to start the reflection and to analyze the constraints around the year 11, and we work with the asset owner by partnership. So my job is to initiate partnerships and to identify the site that have a capability to repower and contact the asset owner and discuss about our collaboration. So classically, it is we start by a little analysis, a little opportunity analysis. So we are able to produce some options reports. So options where we analyze the risk and the economic of the repowering opportunity. And then we propose an agreement. So we start with a LOE discussion and then a contractual discussion to make a contract. Then if I can pursue with the second question on my presentation was do you believe that your analyze on the right time to repower based on a very windy project is still apply to site with weaker and wind condition? In fact, yes, if the site has the capability to make higher turbines. So in the economy of repowering is in the turbine height increase. So this is the key element to make a profitable repowering project. But always the fact to wait to secure a tariff for repowering is more important than the decreasing of the current asset value. So yes, waiting to secure the repowering project is not a good idea for all the French market. And the ideal strategy could be to secure the tariff the earlier, and when you secure the tariff, wait as possible to profit to the current asset value. Maybe Karen on the two other questions, if you have time.
Okay, no problem at all. So we've got a question here that noting that RES is also well established in Sweden, do you consider it likely that you'll bring RES's repowering experience also into the Swedish and Nordic market? And I think that's definitely a possibility in the future. You know, as a company, what we're trying to do is deliver value for our clients. So, you know, obviously the repowering is well established in France. It's something that we're building up here in the UK as, you know, we get to the point where the renewables obligation certificates are starting to fall away. We expect to see that increase in repowering, and I'm working closely with Christoph to share that lessons learned and that experience between the two markets. And I can definitely see that, you know, there is the potential for that repowering knowledge to be shared with our teams. We've got experienced development teams, construction teams, and asset management teams in Scandinavia. So definitely, if there's interest or there's appetite, by all means, get in touch.
Yes.
We'd love to hear about it. And potentially look at how we can support. And I'm sure my colleagues in Scandinavia would be keen to hear as well. And I also just wanted to touch on the question that Christoph answered about how many years before an end of life. So I think, again, it is really important that we, in the UK and Ireland, that we take account for the time it takes to develop a project, to do the necessary surveys, to make sure we have that consenting. So yeah, I would say again, so typically probably a little bit less than in France, maybe about the 7-year mark. But obviously the sooner that you can start having a look at that and having those discussions, the better. Because really you need to make sure that you have that repowering consent in place before you lose the existing project, before it expires. So that's a really good point.
Yes, and in fact, start the development is not the decision to decommission and the decision to invest in the repowering. It is only the decision to secure your ability to repower one day. So it is important to start early.
Exactly. And I think that's a really important point, because the two things can run in tandem. So, you know, the way project development works is that you'll gradually identify risks, you'll do high level assessments, then you'll look to mitigate risk, spend a bit more money, mitigate further until you've got a project that you're happy to submit. So that can be working in tandem with your life extension. They don't need to be one or the other. It's not necessarily binary. So yeah, it's that process of starting exploring. And then finally, there was just a question about insurance costs. And I think, again, it comes back to how you're maintaining your asset. I think that's going to be key in all of this. So if I pass back to you, Alexandra, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I unmuted myself this time. It was very informative, so thank you for both presentations today. We are working with the restricted time, so we couldn't tackle all the questions that I see coming through different channels. So maybe what I can propose to all the participants of the event is to try to get in touch with you directly, because it's possible through the platform. So, you can exchange contacts and network and, look on the Scandinavian market and so on. We can chat section on the platform, and I think that will be a great tool to continue the discussion. And also, we will be sharing later on the recording from the session. So, there's plenty of opportunities still to continue our discussion. So thank you again. It was a pleasure, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Alexandra. Have a good afternoon,
Thank you.
everyone.
Goodbye, everybody.
Cheers.
Bye.